The clock on the wall reads 3:47 p.m. when three masked figures burst through the glass doors of First National Bank. In 17 seconds, their perfectly planned robbery will become a nightmare they never saw coming. The quiet woman behind counter 3, the one everyone calls just Maddy, is about to remind them why some people are exactly who they appear to be and others are wolves in sheep's clothing. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun filters through the tall windows of First National Bank on Maple Street, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. It's Tuesday, September 15th, and the day begins like every other for the past 3 years. Maddy Smith arrives at 7:30 a.m. sharp, her sensible black flats clicking quietly against the floor as she makes her way to the employee entrance. At 28 years old, Maddy possesses the kind of unremarkable appearance that makes her forgettable in crowds. Average height, shoulder-length brown hair, always pulled back in a simple ponytail, and wire-rimmed glasses that she adjusts nervously when customers become impatient. Her navy blue blazer hangs loose on her small frame, and she carries herself with the apologetic posture of someone who's learned to take up as little space as possible. "Morning, Maddy," calls Janet Rodriguez from the loan officer's desk, not bothering to look up from her computer screen. Janet, a woman in her 50s with perfectly styled silver hair and an attitude to match, has made it clear from day one that she considers teller work beneath her educational level and social standing. "Good morning, Mrs. Rodriguez," Maddy replies softly, her voice barely carrying across the lobby. She's learned that quiet responses tend to end conversations faster, and she prefers the solitude of her workstation to the social dynamics that seem to exhaust her. Behind the security glass at counter 3, Maddy begins her opening routine with methodical precision. Every movement is deliberate and economical. She counts her cash drawer with fingers that move in practiced patterns, her eyes scanning the bills with an attention to detail that her supervisor, branch manager David Patterson, has praised in her performance reviews. "Exceptional accuracy," he wrote in her last evaluation, "zero discrepancies in 18 months of service, reliable and professional in all interactions." What he didn't write, but certainly thought, was that Maddy Smith was the kind of employee every bank needed, but no one particularly noticed. The other tellers arrive in stages, each bringing their own energy to the workspace. Sarah Chen, barely 22 and fresh from college, bounces between stations with the enthusiasm of someone who still believes banking might lead to an exciting career in finance. Marcus Williams, a veteran teller in his 40s, moves with the efficient boredom of someone who's processed thousands of transactions and stopped being surprised by human behavior years ago. "Did you see the game last night?" Marcus asks the room in general, beginning his daily attempt to generate conversation among the staff. Sarah launches into an animated discussion about football statistics, while Maddy listens silently, occasionally nodding when someone makes eye contact, but never contributing to the conversation. Her colleagues have learned not to expect much participation from her. She's pleasant enough, they suppose, but not particularly interesting. What they don't notice is how Maddy's eyes constantly scans the lobby, cataloging every customer, every movement, every change in the environment. They don't see how she positions herself with clear sightlines to all exits, or how her hand rests in specific positions that would allow for immediate defensive movement. They've never observed the way she assesses each customer's demeanor, body language, and potential threat level with the unconscious efficiency of someone trained to survive. The morning rush begins at 9 a.m., when the bank opens to customers. A steady stream of people flows through the lobby, business owners making deposits, elderly customers conducting their weekly banking rituals, young professionals handling quick transactions between coffee runs. Maddy processes each interaction with polite efficiency, her soft voice asking the standard questions while her eyes take in detail that would escape most observers. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, 83 years old and a customer for over 40 years, approaches Maddy's window with the careful steps of someone whose world has grown smaller with age. She wears the same navy coat every Tuesday, carries the same worn leather purse, and always requests the same transaction. "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes," Maddy replies warmly, her demeanor shifting slightly to accommodate the elderly woman's needs. "Depositing your Social Security check today?" "Oh, yes, dear," Mrs. Hayes replies, fumbling with the clasp on her purse. "Sometimes I think I should just have it directly deposit, but I like coming in to see you young people. Reminds me there's still kindness in the world." Maddy processes the deposit with extra care, taking time to explain each step, even though Mrs. Hayes heard it dozens of times before. This small act of patience goes unnoticed by her colleagues, who tend to rush elderly customers through their transactions with barely concealed impatience. "There you are, Mrs. Hayes," Maddy says, sliding the receipt across the counter. "Same time next week?" "You are such a sweet girl, Maddy. I don't know why some young man hasn't snatched you up yet." The comment brings a faint smile to Maddy's face, but her eyes remain alert, tracking the movement of other customers while maintaining conversation. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. You have a wonderful day." As the elderly woman shuffles away, Maddy catches a brief interaction between two men near the loan desk that makes her posture straighten almost imperceptibly. One man, wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, asks Janet Rodriguez about the bank's closing procedures, while his companion studies the security camera positions with more interest than casual curiosity would warrant. The observation lasts only seconds before the men leave, but Maddy files the information in the part of her mind that never stops analyzing potential threats. In her previous life, such awareness meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Old habits, she's learned, are almost impossible to break completely. The lunch hour brings a different energy to the bank. Business customers rush through transactions with the urgency of people who measure their lives in billable hours. Maddy handles each interaction efficiently, but notices things others miss. The nervous energy of the man depositing cash in denominations that suggest illegal activity. The woman whose bruises are carefully concealed with makeup, but visible to someone trained to recognize signs of domestic violence. The teenager whose fake ID won't fool security cameras but might slip past less observant tellers. During her own lunch break, Maddy sits alone in the employee break room, eating a sandwich she packed that morning while reading a paperback novel. Her colleagues assume she's antisocial or perhaps shy to the point of dysfunction. They've stopped inviting her to join their conversations about weekend plans, office gossip, or relationship drama. If they knew the truth about why Maddy Smith prefers solitude, why she startles slightly at unexpected sounds, why she chooses the table that faces the door with her back to the wall, their assumptions about her character would shatter like safety glass under pressure. The afternoon shift continues with the methodical rhythm that marks routine banking operations. Customers come and go, transactions process smoothly, and the day progresses towards closing time with the predictability that makes Maddy's colleagues complacent about security and safety. At 3:30 p.m., Maddy notices a black sedan that's been parked across the street for the past hour. Two men sit in the front seats, occasionally glancing at the bank while maintaining what they clearly believe is casual surveillance. Their positioning provides clear sightlines to both the main entrance and their vehicle is angled for quick departure. Professional training kicks in automatically. Maddy begins a mental inventory of the bank's current occupants. 7 customers in the lobby, 4 tellers on duty, Janet Rodriguez at the loan desk, branch manager Patterson in his office with the door closed. Security guard Robert Thompson, 62 years old and 3 months from retirement, sits at his usual post near the front door, more interested in his crossword puzzle than monitoring the environment. The air conditioning system cycles on, covering the sound of footsteps outside the main entrance. Through the glass doors, Maddy sees 3 figures approaching with the purposeful stride of people who've rehearsed their movements. Each wears dark clothing and carries something that bulges beneath their jackets in ways that suggest weapons rather than personal belongings. 17 seconds remain before Maddy Smith's carefully constructed life as an ordinary bank teller will be stripped away, revealing the warrior beneath the wire-rimmed glasses and apologetic smile. The clock on the wall reads 3:47 p.m. when everything changes. The glass doors explode inward with the force of 3 bodies moving in perfect synchronization. The first robber through the entrance is tall and lean, his movements suggesting military or law enforcement training. A black ski mask covers his face, but his eyes scan the lobby with tactical precision that immediately sets him apart from common criminals. The second man follows close behind, shorter but broader, carrying himself with the confident swagger of someone accustomed to intimidating others through physical presence alone. The third figure surprises everyone, a woman, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail that swings with predatory grace toward the teller stations. "Everyone on the ground now!" The lead robber's voice cuts through the afternoon quiet like a blade, carrying the kind of authority that makes civilians freeze with terror. His weapon, a modified AR-15 with tactical accessories that speak of serious preparation, sweeps the lobby in controlled arcs. The second man follows close behind, shorter but broader, carrying himself with the confident swagger of someone accustomed to intimidating others through physical presence alone. The third figure surprises everyone, a woman, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail that swings with predatory grace toward the teller stations. "Everyone on the ground now!" The lead robber's voice cuts through the afternoon quiet like a blade. His weapon, a modified AR-15 with tactical accessories that speak of serious preparation, sweeps the lobby in controlled arcs. Security guard Robert Thompson, caught completely off guard while working his crossword puzzle, fumbles for his service weapon with hands that shake from a combination of adrenaline and age. His reaction time, slowed by years of routine and the comfort of a job where nothing ever happens, proves fatally inadequate for the situation unfolding before him. The second robber moves on Thompson with brutal efficiency. A single strike from the butt of his pistol sends the elderly guard crashing to the marble floor, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. The crossword puzzle scatters across the ground, innocent ink and paper now stained with violence. "Stay down, old man," the robber snarls, kicking Thompson's weapon away before turning his attention to the terrified customers. Anyone tries to be a hero, and Grandpa here gets another lesson in staying retired. Panic erupts throughout the lobby. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, who had been walking slowly toward the exit after completing her weekly transaction, collapses to her knees with a cry of terror that cuts through Maddy's heart like a physical wound. A young mother clutches her toddler against her chest, both of them sobbing as they huddle behind a decorative planter that offers no real protection. Business customers in expensive suits drop their briefcases and smartphones, their worldly confidence evaporating in the face of raw violence. Sarah Chen, the enthusiastic young teller who had been discussing weekend plans just moments before, lets out a scream that echoes off the bank's high ceilings. Her hands shake uncontrollably as she raises them above her head, tears streaming down her face as the reality of mortal danger crashes over her like a wave. Marcus Williams, the veteran teller with his steady demeanor and boring football commentary, backs away from his station with his hands visible, his face pale but his movements controlled. Years of customer service have taught him to de-escalate tensions, but nothing in his experience has prepared him for armed robbery. Janet Rodriguez, the loan officer who had been so dismissive of mere teller work that morning, discovers that her supervisor position means nothing to criminals with weapons. She drops behind her desk, her perfectly styled silver hair now disheveled as she tries to make herself invisible. Branch manager David Patterson emerges from his office at the sound of commotion, taking in the scene with the horrified realization that his quiet, profitable branch has become the target of professional criminals. His hand moves toward the silent alarm button beneath his desk, but the female robber's weapon swings toward him with lethal intent. "Touch that button and everyone dies," she says with cold precision. "Step away from the desk and join your employees." During these first chaotic moments, while terror transforms ordinary people into helpless victims, Maddy Smith experiences a different kind of transformation entirely. The careful mask of submissive insignificance that she's worn for 3 years begins to dissolve, replaced by something far more dangerous. Her breathing shifts from the shallow pants of civilian panic to the controlled rhythm of combat preparation. Muscle memory buried deep in her nervous system awakens like a sleeping predator sensing prey. The tremor in her hands, which her colleagues had always attributed to nervousness, steadies with the rock-solid control of someone who once held enemy lives at the end of a rifle scope. Behind her wire-rimmed glasses, Maddy's eyes perform rapid tactical assessment with the precision of military training that cost taxpayers millions of dollars to develop. 3 hostiles, coordinated movements suggesting professional preparation. Primary weapon, modified AR-15 with extended magazine, carried by apparent team leader. Secondary weapons, 2 pistols, likely 9mm, based on grip configuration. Positioning indicates familiarity with bank layout and security protocols. Customer count, 7 civilians in various states of panic, ranging from elderly woman requiring medical attention to young mother with child who will need immediate protection if situation escalates. Employee count, 4 staff members plus management, all exhibiting fear responses that render them ineffective for defensive purposes. Escape routes, main entrance blocked by primary hostile. Employee exit accessible but requires movement through open space under direct observation. Emergency exits exist but would trigger additional alarms and potential lockdown procedures. The analysis completes in 2.3 seconds, faster than most people can process the fact that they're witnessing a crime in progress. You behind the glass. The lead robber's voice snaps toward the teller stations like a whip crack. Open the vault now or people start dying. His weapon swings toward Mrs. Hayes, the elderly woman whose only crime was conducting her weekly banking ritual with the trust of someone who remembers when communities looked after their vulnerable members. The threat is clear and immediate. Comply or watch innocent blood stain the marble floor. Marcus Williams, his voice shaking but determined, steps forward with his hands raised. Please don't hurt anyone. I can open the cash drawers. Take whatever you want. Cash drawers? The female robber laughs with genuine amusement, a sound that chills everyone who hears it. We're not here for the pocket change you hand out to customers, genius. We want the vault, and we want it now. The demand reveals the sophisticated nature of their operation. These aren't desperate drug addicts looking for quick cash or opportunistic criminals who spotted an easy target. They've done extensive reconnaissance, studied the bank's security systems, and planned an operation designed to maximize profit while minimizing exposure time. Professional bank robbers targeting vault contents represent a completely different level of threat than ordinary criminals. Their preparation suggests inside knowledge, advanced planning, and the willingness to escalate violence if their demands aren't met immediately. The vault operates on time locks, Patterson says from behind his desk, his voice steady despite the obvious terror in his eyes. It can't be opened until tomorrow morning. That's standard security protocol. The lead robber's reaction is swift and brutal. He strikes Patterson across the face with the stock of his rifle, sending the branch manager sprawling across his desk with blood streaming from his nose. Don't lie to me, he roars. We know the emergency override codes exist. We know someone in this bank can open that vault right now. The revelation that they possess inside information about security protocols sends a chill through everyone present. Someone with access to confidential bank operations has provided detailed intelligence about vulnerabilities that should be impossible for outsiders to discover. Sarah Chen sobs louder at the display of violence, her young mind struggling to process the reality that people she works with every day are being brutalized by strangers with weapons. The safe, predictable world of routine banking transactions has been shattered beyond recognition. As the robbers advance toward the teller stations, demanding access to security systems that could cost lives if compromised, they make a critical error in threat assessment. Their attention focuses on the obvious authority figures, management personnel, who appear to control access to money and security systems. They completely ignore the quiet woman at counter 3, the forgettable teller who keeps her head down and processes transactions without drawing attention to herself. In their professional analysis of potential threats and resistance, Maddy Smith doesn't even register as worth considering. That oversight is about to cost them everything. The 17 seconds of chaos and terror that began with their explosive entrance are about to collide with a reality they never anticipated. The ordinary bank teller who trembles when customers raise their voices is preparing to remind three professional criminals why some people are exactly who they appear to be, and others are wolves in sheep's clothing. Maddy Smith's transformation from prey to predator is about to begin. The female robber approaches the teller stations with the confident stride of someone accustomed to intimidating bank employees into submission. Her blonde ponytail sways as she moves, and her eyes hold the cold calculation of a professional who's done this before. In her right hand, a Glock 19 points casually toward the cowering staff, while her left hand carries a canvas bag designed to hold far more money than typical cash drawer contents. "Listen carefully, because I'm only going to explain this once," she says, her voice carrying the tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. "We need access to the vault's emergency override system. One of you knows the codes, and one of you is going to share them with us right now." Marcus Williams, still shaking from witnessing the violence against their security guard and branch manager, raises his trembling hands higher. "Ma'am, I swear we don't have access to those codes. Only corporate security and the regional manager can authorize emergency vault access." The robber's response is a backhanded slap that sends Marcus stumbling against the wall behind the teller stations. "Wrong answer. Try again." Sarah Chen whimpers from her position crouched behind her workstation, her college education and finance providing no preparation for the brutal reality unfolding around her. "Please," she whispers, "we're just tellers. We only have access to our individual cash drawers." "Then you'd better figure out how to get us more than that," the woman snarls, "because we're not leaving empty-handed, and we're not leaving witnesses who can identify us." The threat hangs in the air like poison gas, transforming the robbery from a financial crime into something far more sinister. These aren't criminals planning to take money and disappear. They're eliminating loose ends, which means everyone in the bank has moved from victim status to potential casualty. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, still collapsed on the marble floor near the entrance, begins crying softly. The sound is heartbreaking in its helplessness. An elderly woman who survived the Great Depression, raised 4 children, and buried a husband of 53 years, reduced to terror by strangers with weapons. During this escalation of threats and violence, Maddy Smith maintains her position behind counter 3 with the stillness of someone who understands that movement draws attention. Her colleagues and the robbers continue to view her as the most insignificant person in the room, a quiet, nervous woman whose trembling hands and downcast eyes mark her as completely harmless. But beneath the surface, a transformation is occurring that would terrify everyone present if they understood what they were witnessing. The tremor in Maddy's hands has stopped completely. Her breathing has shifted from quick, shallow pants to the deep, controlled rhythm of someone preparing for extreme physical exertion. Behind her wire-rimmed glasses, her eyes track every movement in the lobby with the precision of targeting systems that once coordinated strikes on enemy positions in places most Americans have never heard of. Her mind begins cataloging resources and opportunities with the methodical efficiency of military training that cost more to develop than most people earn in a lifetime. Counter height provides concealment, but not cover. Distance to primary target, 12 feet, clear line of sight. Secondary targets position near customer seating area, approximately 18 feet with multiple obstacles. Available weapons: letter opener and desk drawer, paperweight on counter surface, scissors and supply cabinet. None optimal, all potentially effective with proper application of force and leverage. Customer positions: elderly woman requires immediate medical attention after resolution. Young mother with child positioned behind planter that offers concealment but no ballistic protection. Business customers clustered near loan desk in exposed positions. The tactical assessment completes while the female robber continues her interrogation of Marcus Williams, unaware that the greatest threat in the room is analyzing her every movement. Corporate policy doesn't matter when people start dying, the robber says, pressing her weapon against Marcus's temple. Call your regional manager. Tell him you have an emergency situation that requires immediate vault access authorization. The lead robber, meanwhile, has positioned himself near the bank's main entrance, his modified AR-15 covering both the lobby and the street outside. His tactical awareness is evident in his positioning. He can monitor external threats while maintaining control over internal hostages. Professional training shows in every aspect of his stance and weapon handling. "Clock's ticking," he calls to his female partner. "Local police response time to silent alarms averages 6 minutes in this area. We've been inside for 3. The third robber, the shorter but broader man who had assaulted security guard Thompson, moves through the customer area with systematic efficiency. He collects cell phones, wallets, and any potential weapons, including an elderly man's walking cane and a woman's pepper spray keychain. Face down, hands behind your heads. Anyone moves, anyone tries to be a hero, and people die. Simple as that." His search brings him near Mrs. Hayes, who whimpers as he roughly checks her purse for valuables. The sound of an elderly woman being terrorized triggers something deep in Maddy's psyche, something that military psychologists had identified during her psychological evaluations as an extreme protective response to civilian casualties. During her years of active service, Maddy Smith had earned commendations for going above and beyond standard protocols to protect non-combatants. She'd risked her own life multiple times to evacuate civilians from combat zones, taking wounds that ended her military career rather than abandon innocent people to enemy fire. The sound of Mrs. Hayes crying activates those same protective instincts with the force of a biological imperative. Sarah Chen, still sobbing behind her workstation, makes the mistake of trying to crawl toward the employee exit. The movement catches the female robber's attention immediately. "Where do you think you're going?" she snarls, swinging her weapon toward the young teller. "Get back to your station now, or I put a bullet in your head." "Please," Sarah whispers, her voice breaking with terror. "I just want to go home. I just started working here. I don't know anything about vault codes or security systems." The robber's finger tightens on the trigger with the casual indifference of someone who's killed before. "Then you're useless to us." In that moment, as Sarah Chen faces the very real possibility of dying for the crime of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, something fundamental shifts in the atmosphere of First National Bank. Maddy Smith's hands, which had been trembling with what everyone assumed was fear, suddenly become perfectly steady. Her posture straightens almost imperceptibly, muscle memory overriding 3 years of carefully maintained submissive body language. Behind her glasses, her eyes lock on to the female robber with the focused intensity of a predator that's identified its target. The transformation is subtle but complete. The nervous bank teller who apologizes for existing has been replaced by someone who once eliminated high-value targets in operations that remain classified to this day. The female robber, still focused on terrorizing Sarah Chen, doesn't notice that the quiet woman at counter 3 has shifted her weight to the balls of her feet. She doesn't see how Maddy's right hand has moved into position to access the letter opener in her desk drawer. She's completely unaware that the most dangerous person in the room has just decided that the robbery is over. "Last chance, little girl," the robber says to Sarah, her weapon steady and her intent clear. Marcus Williams, despite his own terror, tries to intervene. "She's telling the truth. We don't have those codes. Please, just take our cash drawers and leave. There's enough money there for whatever you need." The robber's laugh is cold and humorless. "Cash drawers? We're professionals, not street junkies looking for drug money. We came here for the vault contents, and we're not leaving without them." She turns back to Sarah with deadly intent. "Since none of you want to be helpful, maybe watching your coworker die will motivate the rest of you to be more cooperative." The weapon rises toward Sarah's head as the robber's finger moves to complete her trigger pull. In her mind, she's already calculating the psychological impact of murder on the remaining hostages, planning how the shock and terror will break down their resistance to providing vault access. What she doesn't calculate is the response of a decorated Special Forces operative who spent 3 years hiding in plain sight, waiting for the day when her skills would be needed to protect innocent lives. That day has arrived. Maddy Smith explodes into motion with the lethal grace of someone who's killed enemies of the United States in 12 different countries. The quiet bank teller disappears completely, replaced by a weapon forged in the crucible of special operations and tempered by combat experience that would traumatize ordinary soldiers. The 17 seconds that began with robbers believing they controlled the situation are about to end with the discovery that they've walked into a trap they never saw coming. The letter opener leaves Maddy's hand with the precision of someone who once threw knives as part of advanced combat training. It travels 12 feet in 0.7 seconds, spinning twice before embedding itself in the female robber's wrist with surgical accuracy. The Glock 19 tumbles from nerveless fingers as the woman screams in shock and pain, her carefully planned execution of Sarah Chen transformed into a moment of vulnerability that changes everything. But Maddy Smith is already in motion before the weapon hits the floor. She vaults over the teller counter with the fluid grace of someone who's breached enemy positions in hostile territory. Her wire-rimmed glasses fly off and shatter against the marble floor, revealing eyes that burn with controlled fury. The submissive bank teller who apologized for existing has been replaced by a predator whose very presence seems to alter the physics of the room. The wounded robber, clutching her bleeding wrist, stares in disbelief at the transformation occurring before her. What the hell? Her words are cut off as Maddy closes the distance between them in 2 explosive steps. A precise strike to the robber's solar plexus doubles her over, driving all air from her lungs and rendering her temporarily incapable of calling for help from her partners. A follow-up blow to the back of her neck sends her crashing to the floor unconscious, neutralized with the efficient brutality of someone who's ended threats far more dangerous than bank robbers. The entire sequence takes less than 4 seconds. Sarah Chen, who had been preparing to die moments before, scares in absolute shock at her rescuer. The quiet woman who had processed her payroll deposits for 2 years has just moved with inhuman speed and precision, transforming execution into a rescue with skills that defy comprehension. "Stay down," Maddy whispers to Sarah, her voice carrying a new authority that brooks no argument. "Don't move until I tell you." The lead robber at the front entrance spins toward the commotion, his tactical awareness finally registering that something has gone catastrophically wrong with their carefully planned operation. His modified AR-15 swings toward the teller area as his trained mind processes the impossible sight of his partner unconscious on the floor and a bank employee standing over her with the calm confidence of a professional killer. "Jennifer, what the—" His words die as he realizes he's looking at someone who radiates lethal competence in ways that trigger every survival instinct he possesses. Maddy Smith stands in the center of the lobby with perfect balance, her posture speaking of coiled springs and loaded weapons. Gone is the apologetic hunch of shoulders, the nervous tremor of hands, the downcast eyes that avoided confrontation. In their place is something that makes the robber's combat-trained instincts scream warnings about engaging superior force. "Drop your weapons," Maddy says quietly, her voice carrying across the marble space with absolute authority. "This doesn't have to end badly for anyone else." The lead robber's mind races through threat assessment protocols learned in military service that ended badly enough to drive him to bank robbery. The woman facing him exhibits body language and movement patterns that suggest special operations training at the highest levels. Her neutralization of Jennifer had been executed with a precision that spoke of extensive close-quarters combat experience. But he's committed to a course of action that can't be reversed, and 3 years of successful bank robberies have given him confidence in his own abilities. "Lady, I don't know who you think you are," he says, raising his weapon toward her, "but you just made the biggest mistake of your life." Maddy's response is a slight smile that would have been reassuring on the face of a bank teller, but becomes terrifying on someone who's just demonstrated the ability to end lives with her bare hands. "My name is Madison Smith," she says conversationally, taking a step forward despite the rifle pointed at her center mass. "Staff Sergeant, United States Army Special Forces, designated marksman, close protection specialist, and veteran of 14 classified operations in 7 countries. You're the ones who made a mistake." The revelation hits the lobby like a physical force. Marcus Williams, still bleeding from where the female robber had struck him, stares at his colleague with the dawning realization that he's worked beside a decorated war hero for 3 years without having the slightest clue about her true nature. Branch Manager Patterson, wiping blood from his broken nose, looks at the quiet employee he'd praised for exceptional accuracy with new understanding. Her precision with cash transactions suddenly makes sense when viewed through the lens of military training that demands perfection in all tasks. The third robber, who had been systematically terrorizing customers near the loan desk, turns toward the sound of his team leader's voice. His movement brings him into Maddy's peripheral vision, and she assesses the new threat without taking her eyes off the primary target. "Marcus," she says quietly, her voice carrying the tone of someone accustomed to giving orders under extreme stress. "There's a panic button under your workstation. Press it now. Sarah, when I tell you, crawl toward the employee exit and get everyone out through the back door." The lead robber's finger tightens on his trigger as he realizes his tactical situation has deteriorated beyond recovery. "You think military training makes you bulletproof? Let's find out." Maddy's response is movement that defies human reaction times. She drops into a combat role that takes her below his line of fire while simultaneously grabbing a marble paperweight from a nearby desk. The AR-15 barks once, twice, 3 times, bullets striking where she had been standing moments before and embedding themselves in the wall behind the teller stations. But Maddy Smith is no longer where bullets are flying. She comes out of her role with the paperweight already in motion, thrown with the same deadly accuracy that had once eliminated enemy sentries from distances that challenged the limits of human capability. The improvised projectile strikes the robber's wrist with bone-crushing force, and his weapon tumbles from spasming fingers to clatter across the marble floor. Before he can recover, Maddy closes the distance between them with the explosive speed of someone who's breached enemy positions under hostile fire. Her training takes over completely, muscle memory executing techniques drilled into her through thousands of hours of repetition. A precise strike to his throat disrupts his ability to call out to his remaining partner. A follow-up blow to his solar plexus doubles him over, and a knee to his descending face sends him crashing unconscious to the floor beside his dropped weapon. 2 down, 1 to go. The third robber, witnessing the impossible sight of his heavily armed team being neutralized by a bank teller, makes the critical error of abandoning his hostages to engage what he perceives as the primary threat. He rushes toward Maddy with his pistol raised, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. "You crazy bitch, you don't know who you're messing with." Maddy turns toward him with the calm patience of someone who's faced down enemies far more dangerous than bank robbers. "Actually," she says, sidestepping his wild charge with graceful economy, "I know exactly who I'm dealing with." Her hand snakes out to grab his gun arm as he passes, redirecting his momentum with principles of leverage and physics that transform his attack into his own destruction. A sharp twist dislocates his shoulder while simultaneously disarming him, and a precisely applied pressure point renders him unconscious before he hits the ground. 3 professional bank robbers, armed with military-grade weapons and extensive planning, neutralized in under 90 seconds by a woman they dismissed as insignificant. The silence that follows is deafening. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, still on the floor near the entrance but no longer crying, stares at Maddy with the wonder of someone witnessing a miracle. The young mother with her toddler peers over the planter that had provided their inadequate shelter, her eyes wide with disbelief at the transformation they've witnessed. Security guard Robert Thompson, struggling to sit up despite his head wound, looks at the woman who's just saved everyone in the bank with professional admiration that transcends his pain. "Jesus Christ," he whispers, his voice carrying the awe of someone who recognizes exceptional skill when he sees it. "Lady, remind me never to complain about my job again." Maddy Smith stands among the unconscious criminals, her breathing steady despite the physical exertion, her posture relaxed but alert for additional threats. The wire-rimmed glasses that had been part of her disguise lie shattered on the marble floor, but she no longer needs them to hide behind. The wolf has awakened, and everyone in First National Bank is about to discover that some sheep are anything but defenseless. The wail of sirens grows louder as police cruisers and emergency vehicles converge on First National Bank. Through the glass doors, red and blue lights paint the marble lobby in alternating colors, creating an almost surreal atmosphere where the ordinary world of banking meets the extraordinary reality of what just occurred. Maddy Smith moves through the aftermath with the systematic efficiency of someone trained to secure battlefields after combat operations. She checks each unconscious robber for additional weapons, cable tying their hands with zip ties she produces from her purse, a detail that makes everyone wonder what else the quiet bank teller carries as part of her daily equipment. "The police will want statements from everyone," she tells the group, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to managing crisis situations. "Tell them exactly what you saw, but remember, these men are part of a larger organization. They may have associates who weren't captured today." Her words send a chill through the assembled bank employees and customers. The immediate danger has passed, but Maddy's warning suggests that the threat extends beyond the three criminals now lying unconscious on the marble floor. Detective Lisa Chen, no relation to Sarah Chen from the teller station, enters the bank with the careful steps of someone approaching a crime scene that's already been resolved. At 42, she's investigated hundreds of armed robberies, but the scene before her defies every pattern she's learned to recognize. Three professional criminals, heavily armed and clearly prepared for violence, lie unconscious and restrained. Not a single shot has been fired by law enforcement. No SWAT team was required. The weapons used by the robbers are neatly arranged against the far wall, clearly separated from their owners by someone who understands evidence preservation protocols. "I'm Detective Chen with Metro Police," she announces, her eyes scanning the lobby for the person responsible for this unprecedented crime scene. Every eye in the room turns toward Maddy Smith, who stands near the teller stations with blood on her hands from treating security guard Thompson's head wound. Without her wire-rimmed glasses, her face reveals features that speak of strength and determination rather than the submissive anxiety everyone had grown accustomed to seeing. "Ma'am," Detective Chen, approaching Maddy with the professional caution of someone who recognizes capability when she sees it. "I understand you were instrumental in resolving this situation. Could you walk me through what happened?" Maddy's response is the crisp, factual reporting style of someone who's debriefed after military operations. Three subjects entered the bank at approximately 15:47 hours, armed with automatic weapons and handguns. They demonstrated professional training and inside knowledge of security protocols. When they threatened to execute hostages, I intervened using minimum necessary force to neutralize the threats. The clinical language doesn't match the extraordinary nature of what occurred, and Detective Chen recognizes the disconnect immediately. "Ma'am, what's your background? Because neutralizing three armed professionals isn't something most bank tellers can accomplish." Staff Sergeant Madison Smith, U.S. Army Special Forces, retired. 8 years active duty, multiple combat deployments, honorably discharged due to service-connected injuries. The revelation ripples through the group of witnesses like a stone thrown into still water. Marcus Williams, who had shared football statistics with Maddy every morning for 3 years, stares at her with the dawning realization that he's been discussing weekend games with someone who's seen actual warfare. Branch manager Patterson, still holding a cloth to his bleeding nose, looks at the employee he'd praised for exceptional accuracy with new understanding. Her precision with cash handling suddenly makes perfect sense when viewed through the lens of military training that demands perfection in all tasks. "Ma'am," Detective Chen continues, "I need to understand the sequence of events. How did you go from bank teller to this?" She gestures at the unconscious criminals and the weapons arranged against the wall. Maddy's answer reveals the psychological complexity of transitioning from military service to civilian life. "I've been working here for 3 years because I needed a quiet job that wouldn't trigger my combat stress reactions. Banking seemed safe, predictable customers, routine transactions, no life-or-death decisions." She pauses, looking around the lobby at the faces of people who thought they knew her, but are discovering they knew almost nothing about who she really was. "But when I saw that woman preparing to execute Sarah Chen, when I heard Mrs. Hayes crying on the floor, something inside me switched back on. I couldn't watch innocent people die when I had the training to prevent it." Sarah Chen, still shaking from her near-death experience, approaches Maddy with tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life," she whispers. "That woman was going to kill me, and you stopped her." The young teller's gratitude is painful for Maddy to accept. During her military service, saving lives was the mission. In civilian life, she'd hoped never to need those skills again. The fact that her past had followed her into what should have been a safe, quiet existence troubles her more than she's willing to admit. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, helped to her feet by paramedics who've checked her for injuries, shuffles toward Maddy with the careful steps of someone whose world has been fundamentally altered by what she's witnessed. "Dear," the elderly woman says, reaching for Maddy's hand with trembling fingers, "I've been coming to this bank for 40 years. I've seen tellers come and go, watched young people start their careers and move on to bigger things, but I've never seen anyone show the kind of courage you demonstrated today." The praise from the elderly customer affects Maddy more deeply than any military commendation ever did. Mrs. Hayes represents the innocent civilians that soldiers are sworn to protect, the people who deserve to live their lives free from violence and terror. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes," Maddy responds softly. "I'm just glad everyone is safe." Detective Chen continues her preliminary investigation, interviewing each witness and building a picture of events that will become the official record of one of the most unusual bank robbery resolutions in law enforcement history. The paramedics finish treating security guard Thompson's head wound and declare him stable for transport to the hospital for additional observation. Before being loaded into the ambulance, he insists on speaking with Maddy. "Ma'am," he says, extending his hand with the respect of one professional acknowledging another, "I've been a security guard for 15 years, and I've seen a lot of things go wrong. Today could have ended with bodies on the floor and families destroyed forever. Instead, everyone gets to go home safely because of your actions." His words carry the weight of someone who understands how quickly situations can deteriorate when violence enters peaceful spaces. The difference between Thompson's experience, being overwhelmed by professional criminals, and Maddy's response illustrates the vast gap between civilian security and military special operations training. As the unconscious robbers are loaded into separate ambulances under police guard, Detective Chen reviews the evidence that will form the foundation of what promises to be a straightforward prosecution case. "Miss Smith," she says, approaching Maddy with the business card of a federal agent who specializes in cases involving military veterans, "I have a feeling this incident is going to attract attention from people higher up the food chain than local police. These weren't ordinary bank robbers. Their equipment, training, and inside knowledge suggest connections to larger criminal organizations." The warning proves prescient. Within hours of the incident, federal agents arrived to interview Maddy about possible connections between the robbers and international criminal networks that specifically target military veterans with special operations backgrounds. The quiet life she'd built as an unremarkable bank teller begins to crumble as her actions draw attention from law enforcement agencies that recognize her true capabilities. The price of heroism, she's learning, is the loss of anonymity that had allowed her to heal from the psychological wounds of military service. But as evening falls and the bank is secured as a crime scene, Maddy Smith faces a fundamental choice about who she wants to be going forward. The mask of the submissive, forgettable teller has been permanently removed. Everyone who witnessed her transformation will remember the moment when an ordinary woman revealed herself to be an extraordinary warrior. The question that remains is whether she can find a way to honor both sides of her identity, the protector who saved innocent lives and the quiet civilian who just wants to process transactions and go home to a peaceful existence. Some masks, once removed, can never be worn again. The FBI field office in downtown Chicago hums with activity as Agent Rebecca Martinez reviews the case files spread across her desk. At 35, she's built a reputation for uncovering connections that other investigators miss, and the First National Bank robbery has captured her attention for reasons that extend far beyond the unusual resolution. 3 professional bank robbers neutralized by a single individual, she mutters, studying crime scene photographs that show the systematic efficiency of Maddy Smith's intervention. Military-grade weapons, inside knowledge of security protocols, and they walk into a bank where a decorated Special Forces veteran happens to be working as a teller. Agent Martinez has seen enough cases to recognize when coincidence crosses into conspiracy territory. The robbery bears hallmarks of operations conducted by the Blackwater Syndicate, a criminal organization that specifically recruits discharged military personnel for high-value crimes targeting financial institutions. Her investigation over the past 48 hours has revealed disturbing patterns. The 3 robbers, identified as former Army Rangers Marcus Thompson, ex-Navy SEAL Jennifer Walsh, and discharged Marine Tyler Jackson, were all members of the same private military contractor that operated in Afghanistan before losing government contracts due to questionable conduct. But what troubles Martinez most is the precision with which they targeted First National Bank. Their inside knowledge of security protocols suggests someone provided detailed intelligence about vulnerabilities that should be impossible for outsiders to access. The secure conference room at the FBI building fills with tension as Martinez presents her findings to a joint task force that includes representatives from multiple federal agencies. The stakes have escalated beyond simple bank robbery into potential national security implications. Ladies and gentlemen, Martinez begins, activating a wall display that shows interconnected criminal networks spanning multiple states. We're looking at the tip of an iceberg that threatens every veteran with special operations background who's trying to build a quiet civilian life. The presentation reveals a sophisticated criminal enterprise that specifically targets military veterans for recruitment, exploitation, or elimination. The Blackwater Syndicate maintains detailed files on thousands of discharged special operations personnel, tracking their civilian employment, financial status, and psychological vulnerabilities. Madison Smith, Martinez continues, highlighting Maddy's military record on the screen, represents exactly the kind of target this organization seeks to either recruit or neutralize. Decorated veteran, combat experience, struggling with civilian transition, working in a position with access to financial systems. Agent Thomas Wright from the Department of Homeland Security leans forward with obvious concern. Are you suggesting the robbery was specifically designed to target Miss Smith? I'm suggesting something worse, Martinez replies, advancing to the next slide that shows surveillance photographs taken outside the bank during the weeks preceding the robbery. They've been watching her for months, studying her routines, learning her capabilities. This wasn't a random bank robbery that she happened to interrupt. This was a recruitment test disguised as a criminal operation. The revelation sends shockwaves through the assembled agents. The idea that criminal organizations are actively hunting decorated veterans represents a threat to national security that extends far beyond financial crimes. Meanwhile, 3 miles away at First National Bank, Maddy Smith sits in branch manager Patterson's office surrounded by federal agents who've been asking increasingly complex questions about her military service and current employment. The quiet life she'd built over 3 years has been completely dismantled in 72 hours. Agent Sarah Coleman from Veterans Affairs leads the interview with the careful professionalism of someone who understands the psychological complexity of military transition. Miss Smith, we need you to understand that your actions may have exposed you to retaliation from a criminal network that specifically targets veterans like yourself. Maddy's response carries the weary resignation of someone who's discovered that her past refuses to remain buried. Agent Coleman, I spent 8 years in special operations because I believed in protecting innocent people. 3 days ago, I did exactly what my training taught me to do. If that makes me a target, then so be it. It's not that simple, Coleman continues, opening a classified file that contains photographs and documents spanning multiple years. The men who robbed your bank are part of an organization that maintains detailed surveillance on thousands of veterans. They know where you work, where you live, who you associate with. They've been planning something involving you for months. The photographs show Maddy entering and leaving her apartment building, grocery shopping, attending her weekly therapy sessions for combat-related stress. The level of detailed surveillance reveals an operation that extends far beyond spontaneous criminal activity. What do they want? Maddy asks, though part of her already knows the answer from her military intelligence training. Recruitment, Agent Coleman replies bluntly. The Blackwater Syndicate specifically targets veterans with your skill set for high-value criminal operations. If recruitment fails, they eliminate potential threats to their activities. The weight of this revelation settles over Maddy like a familiar burden. Even in civilian life, her military service continues to define her existence in ways she'd hoped to escape. Agent Martinez arrives at the bank as the interview concludes, bringing with her evidence that transforms the case from local crime to federal investigation. Her presence indicates the seriousness with which federal agencies are treating the implications of Maddy's situation. Miss Smith, Martinez says, settling into a chair across from the woman who's become the center of a complex investigation. We've discovered that your military records were accessed illegally multiple times over the past year. Someone with significant resources has been building a comprehensive profile of your capabilities and vulnerabilities. She produces a tablet displaying digital records that show unauthorized access to classified databases containing information about Maddy's service record, psychological evaluations, and medical history related to her combat injuries. The data breach extends to other veterans as well, Martinez continues. We've identified over 2,000 former special operations personnel whose records have been compromised. You're not just a target, you're part of a systematic campaign to exploit or eliminate the most capable veterans in the country. The scope of the threat overwhelms even Maddy's military-trained mind. The quiet civilian life she'd sought has been an illusion from the beginning. Criminal organizations have been watching, planning, and preparing to either use her skills for illegal purposes or eliminate her as a potential obstacle to their operations. What are my options? Maddy asks, though her tone suggests she already understands the limited nature of her choices. Agent Coleman's response confirms her fears. Witness protection would require you to abandon your identity completely and relocate to an area where your skills and background could be monitored by federal agencies. Alternatively, you could assist our investigation by serving as bait to expose the full extent of this criminal network. The choice presented to Maddy reflects the harsh reality faced by many veterans whose special operations background makes them valuable to both legitimate and criminal organizations. There is no path that leads back to the anonymous civilian existence she'd worked 3 years to build. Outside the bank, unmarked federal vehicles maintain surveillance on the building and surrounding area. The criminal network that targeted Maddy has resources and connections that span multiple states, and their response to the failed recruitment operation remains unknown. Agent Martinez reviews intelligence reports that suggest the Blackwater Syndicate maintains cells in major cities across the country, each tasked with identifying and approaching veterans whose skills could be monetized through criminal enterprises. The organization operates with the discipline and structure of a military unit, making them far more dangerous than traditional criminal groups. The robbery was phase one of a three-part operation, Martinez explains to her assembled team. Phase two would have involved approaching Miss Smith with lucrative offers to provide security consulting for what appeared to be legitimate businesses. Phase three was recruitment into increasingly illegal activities that would have compromised her completely. The systematic nature of the recruitment process reveals an organization that understands how to exploit the psychological vulnerabilities of veterans struggling with civilian transition. Offers of meaningful work, financial security, and camaraderie with other veterans create powerful incentives for participation in criminal activities. But Maddy Smith's decisive action during the robbery has disrupted years of careful planning and exposed operational methods that the syndicate had successfully concealed from law enforcement. Her refusal to be victimized has transformed her from a target into the key to dismantling a criminal network that threatens thousands of other veterans. As evening falls over Chicago, federal agents coordinate a response to threats that extend far beyond a single bank robbery. The quiet woman who wanted nothing more than to process transactions and avoid attention has become the center of an investigation that could protect countless other veterans from exploitation by criminal organizations. The price of heroism, Maddy is learning, extends far beyond a moment of action. Sometimes saving innocent lives means sacrificing the peaceful existence that makes civilian life worth protecting in the first place. The safe house sits in an unremarkable suburb 40 miles outside Chicago. Its bland exterior conceals sophisticated security systems that would rival military installations. For the past week, Maddy Smith has lived behind bulletproof windows and reinforced doors while federal agents debate her fate in conference rooms she's not allowed to enter. The psychological isolation is more challenging than the physical confinement. After 3 years of carefully constructed normalcy, morning coffee, predictable work routines, quiet evenings reading in her own apartment, the return to high-security existence feels like imprisonment despite its protective purpose. Agent Sarah Coleman finds Maddy in the safe house kitchen at 0500 hours, drinking coffee and staring out armored windows at suburban streets that might as well be on another planet. The veteran's discipline shows in her early rising habits, but her shoulders carry tension that speaks of unresolved internal conflict. "Couldn't sleep?" Coleman asks, settling into a chair across from the woman who's become both a protected asset and a potential weapon in the federal investigation. "Sleep comes when it wants to," Maddy replies, her voice carrying the weary acceptance of someone whose rest has been interrupted by nightmares for years. Military training teaches you to function without it, but civilian life was supposed to be different. The conversation touches on the fundamental challenge facing many veterans, the difficulty of transitioning from hypervigilance necessary for survival in combat zones to the relaxed awareness that civilian life requires. For Maddy, that transition has been permanently disrupted by the discovery that her peaceful existence was an illusion. Agent Coleman opens a secure tablet containing updated intelligence reports that have arrived overnight. "We've identified 17 additional targets across 8 states. The Blackwater Syndicate has been systematically approaching veterans with your level of training, and their success rate is troubling." The photographs on the screen show men and women whose military records mirror Maddy's own. Decorated Special Operations veterans who struggled with civilian transition and were recruited into criminal activities that gradually escalated from security consulting to armed robbery, international weapons trafficking, and worse. "What happened to the ones who refused recruitment?" Maddy asks, though her expression suggests she already knows the answer. Coleman's response confirms her fears. 3 apparent suicides, 2 car accidents that forensic analysis suggest were staged, and 1 house fire that destroyed all evidence of the victim's military background. The syndicate eliminates threats with the same efficiency they use for recruitment. The systematic nature of the elimination process reveals an organization that operates with military precision and intelligence capabilities that rival federal agencies. Their access to classified databases, sophisticated surveillance equipment, and network of discharged military personnel creates a criminal enterprise unlike anything law enforcement has encountered before. They're not just targeting veterans, Coleman continues, advancing to intelligence reports that expand the scope of the threat. They're building a private army of highly trained individuals who've been disconnected from official military command structure. The implications for national security are staggering. Agent Martinez arrives at the safe house with news that transforms the federal response from investigation to active operation. Her expression carries the grim determination of someone who's discovered that the threat extends far beyond what anyone initially imagined. Miss Smith, Martinez says, settling into the secured conference room where major decisions about Maddy's future will be made. We've intercepted communications that suggest the syndicate is planning a major operation within the next 2 weeks. Our analysis indicates you're central to their timeline. The intercepted messages, decoded by NSA cryptographers, reveal a criminal organization operating with the structure and discipline of a special operations unit. Code names, operational security protocols, and communication patterns suggest leadership by individuals with extensive military intelligence backgrounds.
They call you Package 7, Martinez explains, displaying encrypted communications on a wall-mounted screen. Our linguists believe this refers to your recruitment value rather than elimination priority. They want your skills for something specific. The revelation that criminal organizations view decorated veterans as commodities to be acquired and exploited adds another layer of violation to Maddy's experience. Her military service, undertaken to protect American interests and innocent civilians, has been perverted into a recruitment tool for enemies of the state she once served. Agent Coleman presents the options that federal agencies have developed for addressing both the immediate threat to Maddy and the broader challenge posed by the Blackwater Syndicate. Option 1. Full witness protection with complete identity change and relocation to a monitored community where your background would be known only to federal handlers. You'd be safe, but your life as Madison Smith would end permanently. The first option offers security at the cost of everything Maddy has worked to build over 3 years of civilian life. The relationships with colleagues like Marcus Williams and Sarah Chen, the routine interactions with customers like Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the simple pleasure of being trusted with ordinary responsibilities, all would disappear behind the wall of federal protection. Option 2. Cooperate with a joint federal operation designed to expose and dismantle the syndicate by allowing them to approach you under controlled circumstances. High risk, but potential to protect thousands of other veterans who are currently targets. The second option appeals to the protective instincts that drove Maddy's original decision to serve in special operations. The opportunity to prevent other veterans from experiencing recruitment, exploitation, or elimination creates a mission purpose that civilian banking never provided. Option 3, Martinez adds, is no option at all. If you refuse federal protection and attempt to return to your previous life, the syndicate will either recruit you through escalating pressure tactics or eliminate you as a security threat. Based on their operational patterns, you have perhaps 2 weeks before they act. The stark reality of her situation eliminates any possibility of returning to the peaceful anonymity she'd sought after military discharge. The skills that made her valuable to the United States Army have made her equally valuable to criminal organizations that view veteran expertise as a resource to be exploited. Maddy stares at classified documents that reveal the scope of veteran exploitation across the country. Hundreds of decorated service members have been approached by recruiters offering financial security, meaningful work, and camaraderie with other veterans. Those who accepted found themselves gradually drawn into increasingly illegal activities until extraction became impossible. How many veterans are we talking about? She asks, studying organizational charts that map the syndicate's recruitment networks across multiple states. Conservative estimate, over 5,000 have been approached in the past 3 years, Martinez replies. Unknown numbers have been successfully recruited, relocated, or eliminated. The syndicate operates with compartmentalized cells that limit our ability to assess their full scope. The numbers represent a systematic assault on the veteran community that extends far beyond individual criminal recruitment. The Blackwater Syndicate has weaponized the challenges of military transition, exploiting unemployment, PTSD, social isolation, and financial stress to build a criminal army from America's most highly trained soldiers. Agent Coleman recognizes the internal struggle playing out behind Maddy's controlled expression. The decision she faces involves weighing personal safety against mission purpose, individual survival against collective protection of the veteran community. Take the night to consider your options, Coleman suggests. But understand that every day we delay gives the syndicate more time to recruit additional veterans or eliminate existing threats to their operations. That evening, alone in the secure bedroom of the safe house, Maddy Smith confronts the choice that will define the rest of her life. Through bulletproof windows, she watches suburban families living the peaceful existence she'd worked 3 years to achieve, unaware that their security depends on people willing to sacrifice their own anonymity for the greater good. Her military decorations, packed away in a box she'd hoped never to open again, include commendations for actions that placed mission success above personal safety. The values that drove those decisions haven't changed, even if the battlefield has shifted from foreign combat zones to American streets where criminal organizations prey on her fellow veterans. The phone call she makes to Agent Coleman at 0600 carries the weight of someone who's chosen duty over safety once again. "I'll do it," Maddy says, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's accepting. Not for the government agencies involved, but for the veterans who deserve better than exploitation by criminals who've perverted everything we served to protect. The decision transforms Madison Smith from protected asset to active participant in an operation that will either dismantle a criminal network or cost her life. Some battles, she's learned, follow soldiers home from war zones and demand the same courage that victories abroad required. The peaceful life she'd sought will have to wait until all veterans can sleep safely in their beds. The abandoned warehouse on Chicago's South Side has been transformed into a sophisticated command center that would impress military tacticians. Multiple agencies coordinate through encrypted communications, while surveillance teams monitor every approach to the building where Operation Shepherd's Watch will either succeed spectacularly or fail catastrophically. Agent Martinez stands before a wall of monitors displaying real-time intelligence from field units positioned throughout the city. 3 months of preparation have led to this moment, when Madison Smith will walk into the most dangerous recruitment meeting of her life, surrounded by federal protection that must remain invisible to maintain her cover. "All units report ready status," Martinez commands, her voice carrying through secure headsets worn by agents positioned within a 2-mile radius of the target location. "Remember, we get one chance at this. If the syndicate suspects federal involvement, they'll disappear and resurface with new identities in different cities." 6 blocks away, Maddy Smith sits in an unmarked van, reviewing the psychological profile federal analysts have developed for Victor Kozlov, the syndicate recruiter who believes he's meeting a financially desperate veteran ready to leverage her special operations skills for criminal profit. The profile reveals a former Russian Spetsnaz operator whose own military service ended in disgrace and exile. "He'll probe for psychological vulnerabilities first," Agent Coleman explains, her voice steady despite the obvious tension of sending someone into mortal danger. "Financial pressure, social isolation, resentment toward government agencies that discharged you without adequate support. Give him enough to believe, but not so much that he questions why you're so willing to cooperate." The wire concealed beneath Maddy's clothing represents technology advanced enough to transmit clear audio through multiple layers of interference while remaining undetectable to counter-surveillance equipment. Her backup consists of federal agents who must maintain distance sufficient to avoid detection while staying close enough to respond if the situation deteriorates. The meeting location, a coffee shop in Lincoln Park chosen by Kozlov for its multiple exits and civilian foot traffic, represents the syndicate's sophisticated understanding of operational security. Any federal response that endangers innocent bystanders will be constrained by protocols that criminal organizations don't follow. Final equipment check, Agent Martinez says through Maddy's earpiece, her voice barely audible through technology that creates the illusion of casual conversation. Remember, we need him to reveal operational details about recruitment networks, financial structure, and planned operations. Push for specifics about other veterans they're targeting. Maddy adjusts the small cross pendant around her neck, actually a secondary transmitter that will continue broadcasting even if primary surveillance equipment is discovered and destroyed. Her appearance has been carefully crafted to suggest a veteran struggling with civilian transition. Slightly unkempt hair, clothing that's clean but worn, body language that projects vulnerability rather than the lethal competence she demonstrated during the bank robbery. "I spent 8 years protecting people I'd never met," she says quietly into the surveillance microphone. "Today, I'm protecting veterans who deserve better than exploitation by criminals who've forgotten what service actually means." The walk into Lincoln Park requires every bit of acting ability Maddy possesses. Each step must convey desperation rather than determination, vulnerability rather than controlled strength. Federal surveillance teams track her progress through cameras positioned throughout the area, but their protection depends on maintaining the illusion that she's acting alone. Viktor Kozlov sits at a corner table with clear sightlines to all entrances. His positioning reveals training that mirrors Maddy's own tactical awareness. At 45, he carries himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling conversations and manipulating people into decisions they'll regret forever. "Madison Smith," he says as she approaches, his accent barely detectable after years of practicing American speech patterns. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. I understand you've been having financial difficulties since leaving the military." The opening gambit reveals how thoroughly the syndicate has researched her background. They've constructed a narrative that explains her willingness to consider illegal employment based on fabricated financial pressure and social isolation that mirrors the genuine struggles of thousands of discharged veterans. "The bank job pays rent, but barely," Maddy responds, settling into the chair across from him with body language that suggests nervous energy rather than tactical positioning. 3 years of civilian work and I'm still living paycheck to paycheck while my military skills go to waste." Kozlov's smile carries the predatory warmth of someone who's recruited dozens of veterans into criminal activities. "Your skills are hardly wasted. The private security sector values individuals with your background, especially for international consulting that pays considerably more than domestic banking." The conversation progresses through carefully scripted phases designed to gradually escalate Maddy's apparent willingness to consider illegal employment. Kozlov presents opportunities that begin with legitimate security consulting and progress toward activities that clearly violate federal law. "Some clients require services that government agencies would consider questionable," he explains, ordering coffee that neither of them intends to drink. But their compensation reflects the specialized nature of the work. Veterans with your capabilities can earn more in 6 months than most civilians see in 5 years. Agent Martinez monitors the conversation from the mobile command center, watching as Kozlov follows recruitment patterns identified through analysis of other syndicate operations. The progression from legitimate offers to criminal opportunities creates legal evidence while revealing operational methods that federal agencies can use to protect other veterans. "What kind of questionable services?" Maddy asks, injecting her voice with the curiosity of someone who's decided that financial security justifies moral compromise. "I mean, I'm not looking to hurt innocent people, but if we're talking about corporate security or government contract work..." Kozlov's response confirms federal suspicions about the syndicate's scope and ambitions. "Our clients include legitimate businesses requiring protection in unstable regions, private military contractors seeking experienced personnel for overseas operations, and financial institutions that need security consulting for high-value transfers." The mention of financial institutions triggers alerts throughout the federal surveillance network. The syndicate's targeting of banks represents a threat to economic stability that extends far beyond individual criminal enterprises. Recently, Kozlov continues, we've had particular success placing veterans in positions that provide access to financial systems and security protocols. Your experience in banking would be especially valuable for clients requiring detailed intelligence about institutional vulnerabilities. The revelation that the syndicate specifically places operatives within financial institutions to gather intelligence for future criminal operations represents a threat to national economic security. Maddy's role as a bank teller wasn't coincidental. It was part of a systematic infiltration of American banking systems.
"You want me to spy on my own employer?" Maddy asks, her tone carrying the perfect mixture of moral uncertainty and financial temptation. "What kind of information would your clients need?" Kozlov's answer provides federal agencies with intelligence that will protect financial institutions across multiple states. Security schedules, vault access protocols, personnel backgrounds, technology specifications, information that allows our clients to provide more effective protection services. The euphemistic language barely conceals criminal intent, but provides legal evidence sufficient to prosecute syndicate leadership while preserving the intelligence sources that exposed their operations. As the conversation reaches its climax, Kozlov makes the tactical error that federal agencies have been waiting for. He reveals specific details about upcoming operations, target locations, and the identities of other veterans who've been recruited for criminal activities. "Our next major operation requires someone with your specific skill set," he says, leaning forward with the intensity of someone closing a crucial deal. "International scope, substantial compensation, and the kind of meaningful work that civilian employment never provides." Agent Martinez gives the signal that brings federal response teams into position around the coffee shop. Kozlov's arrest must occur without endangering civilian bystanders while preserving evidence that will dismantle the entire syndicate network. "Before I commit to anything," Maddy says, following the script that will elicit final incriminating statements, "I need to know that your organization has the resources to protect people who work for you. What happens if something goes wrong?" Kozlov's response reveals the syndicate's elimination protocols for operatives who become security risks. "Our organization takes care of its people, permanent solutions for permanent problems." The coded threat confirms federal suspicions about veteran disappearances and provides legal justification for treating the syndicate as a terrorist organization rather than ordinary criminal enterprise. "FBI, nobody move!" Agent Martinez's voice cuts through the coffee shop's casual atmosphere as federal agents emerge from concealment positions throughout the area. Kozlov's hand moves toward a concealed weapon, but Maddy's training allows her to neutralize the threat before he can endanger innocent civilians. The arrest occurs with the precision of a military operation, federal agents securing evidence while protecting bystanders who never realized they'd witnessed the climax of a months-long investigation. Kozlov's capture provides access to communication networks that will lead to arrests across 8 states and the protection of hundreds of veterans targeted for recruitment or elimination. 6 months later, Madison Smith testifies before a congressional committee investigating the exploitation of discharged military personnel by criminal organizations. Her courage in exposing the syndicate has led to federal legislation providing enhanced support services for veterans transitioning to civilian life. The peaceful existence she'd sought as a bank teller remains elusive, but her actions have protected thousands of veterans from criminal exploitation while exposing security vulnerabilities that threatened national economic stability. "Service doesn't end with discharge," she tells the congressional panel. "Sometimes protecting innocent people requires sacrificing the quiet life you've earned through military service. Some battles follow soldiers home, and some missions never truly end." The bank robbery that revealed her true identity lasted 17 seconds. The investigation that followed protected a generation of veterans from criminal predators who would have exploited their service for personal profit. Madison Smith learned that heroes don't always get to choose their battles, but they always get to choose how they fight them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up.
Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.